The hum of the refrigerator was a constant in our otherwise silent house. It was a sound I'd always found comforting, a background drone to our shared life. Tonight, though, it felt like a mocking counterpoint to the turmoil brewing inside me. Sarah was out, another girls' weekend, she'd said. These getaways had become a regular fixture on her calendar, a monthly escape to some spa retreat or trendy city. I used to enjoy the brief solitude, the chance to catch up on projects or simply relax without the usual domestic rhythm. But lately, a disquiet had settled over me, a feeling like a loose thread unraveling the fabric of our life. It started subtly, a shift in Sarah's demeanor, a coolness in her eyes when she looked at me. The easy laughter that once filled our home had been replaced by strained politeness. Our conversations dwindled to perfunctory exchanges about schedules and meals. Intimacy, both physical and emotional, had become a distant memory. I tried to talk to her about it, of course. I'd broached the subject gently, asking if everything was all right, if she was stressed or unhappy. She'd brushed my concerns aside with a practiced smile and a dismissive wave of her hand. Just tired, she'd say, or work's been crazy. I wanted to believe her. I needed to believe her. But the gnawing unease persisted. Tonight, I found myself drawn to her Instagram account. It was a silly habit, I knew, scrolling through the curated snapshots of her life, searching for some clue, some hidden message. She'd posted a picture earlier, a group shot from the resort. There she was, radiant as always, surrounded by her friends. Or at least the people she called her friends. Something about the image snagged my attention. It wasn't the luxurious backdrop or the carefully posed smiles. It was the way Sarah was leaning into someone, a figure partially obscured by another woman in the foreground. A flash of recognition, a jolt of something cold and sharp, pierced through my denial. I zoomed in on the image, my heart pounding in my chest. It wasn't a woman Sarah was leaning on. It was a man. My breath hitched. I knew that man. It was Damien, a friend of Sarah's, a self-proclaimed artist with a penchant for flamboyant clothing and an unervingly intense gaze. I'd met him a few times at gallery openings with Sarah. He was always charming, effusive, a little too eager to please. I'd never liked him. There was something about him that made my skin crawl. And now, seeing him in this picture, so close to Sarah, a knot of dread tightened in my stomach. The way Sarah's hand rested on his arm, the intimacy in her posture. It was more than friendship. It was undeniable. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. The hum of the refrigerator suddenly sounded deafening, a relentless reminder of the emptiness that had crept into our home, an emptiness that now threatened to consume me. The photograph became a phantom limb, an invisible weight pressing down on me. I couldn't shake it from my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it. Sarah's hand on Damien's arm, the easy intimacy of their bodies, the unspoken language in their posture. I replayed every interaction I'd ever had with Damien, searching for clues, for any hint of the betrayal that now seemed so glaringly obvious. His overly friendly greetings, his lingering glances at Sarah, his constant presence at events she attended. It all clicked into place, a mosaic of suspicion forming a devastating picture. Sleep offered no respite. I tossed and turned, haunted by fragmented dreams of Sarah and Damien, their faces blurred, their voices distorted. I woke up in a cold sweat, the image of the photograph seared into my brain. The house felt alien, the familiar furniture, the carefully chosen artwork, all seemed to mock me with their silent complicity. How could I have been so blind? How could I have missed the signs? The questions swirled in my mind, a relentless torment. I tried to rationalize it, to find some explanation, some way to dismiss the gnawing certainty in my gut. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just a harmless friendship. Maybe I was projecting my own insecurities onto the situation. But deep down, I knew the truth. The photograph was a smoking gun, a stark and undeniable testament to Sarah's betrayal. The thought of her with him, of their intimacy, sent a wave of nausea through me. I felt violated, humiliated, as if a part of me had been stolen. The next morning, Sarah returned from her girls' weekend. Her face flushed, her eyes sparkling. She greeted me with a peck on the cheek and a breezy, "Had a wonderful time. You wouldn't believe the spa treatments they had." Her words were like shards of glass in my ears. I looked at her, searching for some flicker of guilt, some sign of remorse. But her expression was open, carefree, almost smug. It was as if she was wearing a mask, a perfect facade of innocence that hid the truth beneath. I played my part, feigning normalcy, pretending that everything was fine. I listened to her recount her weekend, her words a meaningless drone in the background. I watched her as she unpacked her bag, carefully placing her souvenirs on the dresser, her movements betraying nothing. The charade felt suffocating, a weight pressing down on my chest. I wanted to scream, to confront her, to unleash the rage that was building inside me. But something held me back. I knew that confronting her now would be a mistake. I needed proof, irrefutable evidence of her infidelity. I needed to understand the depth of her betrayal, the extent of her deception. And then I would make her pay. The days that followed were a blur of agonizing normalcy. I went through the motions of my life, attending meetings, completing tasks, interacting with colleagues. All the while a maelstrom of emotions raged within me. Sarah continued her charade, oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. She would chatter about her day, her plans, her friends, her voice a grating melody against the backdrop of my silent fury. I would nod and smile, playing the role of the dutiful husband, all the while plotting my revenge. I became a detective, a shadow lurking in the corners of our own home. I observed Sarah with a newfound intensity, scrutinizing her every move, her every word, her every expression. I searched for clues, for any slip-up that would confirm my suspicions. I checked her phone when she was in the shower, scanning her messages, her emails, her social media feeds. I found nothing incriminating, just the usual mundane chatter and work-related correspondence. But I noticed something odd. A messaging app one didn't recognize, its icon a stylized bird with iridescent plumage. It was always open in the background, its notifications silenced. My curiosity was piqued. I'd never seen Sarah use this app before. Who was she communicating with that required such secrecy? The question gnawed at me, fueling my suspicions. I began researching the app, learning everything I could about its features, its security protocols, its user base. It was called Chirp, a supposedly secure platform favored by privacy-conscious individuals. The irony was not lost on me. Here was Sarah, my wife, the woman who shared my life, my home, my bed, communicating with someone in secret, using an app designed to keep prying eyes away. The more I learned about Chirp, the more determined I became to access Sarah's account. I knew it wouldn't be easy. The app boasted end-to-end encryption, making it virtually impossible to intercept messages. But I was not deterred. I spent hours online, scouring forums, reading articles, watching tutorials, learning about encryption, decryption, and password recovery techniques. I felt a strange sense of detachment, as if I were watching myself from outside my own body. The man I was, the man who trusted his wife implicitly, who believed in the sanctity of their marriage, was gone. In his place was a stranger, a man consumed by a single-minded obsession to uncover the truth. Weeks turned into a relentless cycle of obsession. Days were spent in a haze of work and feigned normalcy, while nights were dedicated to the pursuit of Sarah's secrets. I became a ghost in my own home, a silent observer of her life, my presence a mere formality. The once familiar rituals of our shared existence, dinner together, watching television, the occasional goodnight kiss, felt hollow, devoid of meaning. I was living a lie, a carefully constructed performance for an audience of one. The Chirp app became my nemesis, a digital fortress guarding Sarah's secrets. I tried every trick in the book, every password recovery technique, every exploit I could find online. But the app's security was formidable. I was locked out, a prisoner of my own ignorance. Frustration gnawed at me, fueling my determination. I refused to be defeated. I would find a way in, no matter the cost. Then one evening, a breakthrough. Sarah was in the bath, her phone carelessly left on the bedside table. I hesitated, a flicker of doubt momentarily clouding my resolve. Was this truly the path I wanted to take? Was I willing to violate Sarah's privacy, to betray her trust in such a fundamental way? The answer came without hesitation. Yes, I had been betrayed, my trust shattered, my life turned upside down. I had the right to know the truth no matter how painful it might be. With trembling fingers, I picked up her phone. The screen was locked, but I had anticipated this. Over the past weeks, I had meticulously observed Sarah entering her passcode, memorizing the pattern of her movements. I took a deep breath and entered the code. The screen unlocked, granting me access to her digital life. My heart pounded in my chest as I opened the Chirp app. The interface was sleek and minimalist, a stark contrast to the turmoil it contained. I navigated to Sarah's messages, my fingers hovering over the screen. A list of contacts appeared, each one a potential source of pain. And then I saw it. Damien's name, his profile picture a stylized portrait with his signature flamboyant flair. I clicked on the conversation, my stomach churning with anticipation and dread. The messages were like a punch to the gut. Months of intimate exchanges, filled with passionate declarations, secret rendezvous, and cruel jokes at my expense. They discussed their affair in graphic detail, their words painting a vivid picture of their intimacy. Sarah's messages were particularly hurtful. She spoke of her boredom with me, her frustration with our life, her growing disdain for my predictability. She called me boring, unambitious, a safe bet. She mocked my hobbies, my friends, my career. She even ridiculed my physical appearance, comparing me unfavorably to Damien's artistic physique. The betrayal was not just physical. It was emotional, a calculated dismantling of our life together. Sarah had confided in Damien about everything, her frustrations, her dreams, her deepest desires. He had become her confidant, her lover, her everything. And I, her husband, had been reduced to a mere footnote in her life, a source of financial security and social status. The initial shock of the messages gave way to a chilling numbness. I felt like an observer of my own life, watching a tragedy unfold from a distance. The words on the screen blurred, the intimate details of their affair merging into a grotesque tapestry of betrayal. I scrolled through months of conversations, each message a fresh wound, a testament to the depth of Sarah's deception. There were photographs, too. Selfies of Sarah and Damien, their faces pressed close together, their smiles radiant with happiness. Pictures of them in hotel rooms, their bodies intertwined, their passion evident in every touch. Images of them at restaurants, at parties, at events I had been excluded from. They had built a life together, a secret world where I didn't exist. And I, the fool, had been none the wiser. The rage that had been simmering within me finally erupted. I threw Sarah's phone across the room, the sound of it shattering against the wall a satisfying release. I paced the room, my fists clenched, my body trembling with fury. I wanted to hurt Sarah, to make her feel the pain she had inflicted on me. I wanted to confront her, to scream at her, to unleash the torrent of emotions that threatened to consume me. But a strange calm settled over me. I realized that a direct confrontation would be pointless. Sarah would deny, deflect, minimize. She would play the victim, turning the tables on me, accusing me of being controlling, jealous, paranoid. I wouldn't give her the satisfaction. My revenge would be cold, calculated, and devastating. I would make her pay, not just for the affair, but for the years of lies, the emotional manipulation, the utter disregard for my feelings. I spent the rest of the night in a feverish haze, my mind racing with plans. I would start by systematically dismantling our shared life. I would transfer our joint savings into a separate account, leaving her with nothing. I would document her infidelity, gathering every message, every photo, every piece of evidence I could find. I would consult with a lawyer, ensuring that I had the strongest possible case for divorce. I would expose her affair to our friends and family, stripping her of her social support network. I would destroy her reputation, her career, her entire life. As the first rays of dawn filtered through the window, I felt a sense of grim satisfaction. The man I had been, the man who loved and trusted his wife, was gone. In his place was a stranger, a man fueled by a burning desire for revenge. The game was on, and I would play it to the bitter end. The first step was the easiest. With a few clicks, I transferred our joint savings into a new account, leaving Sarah with access only to her personal funds. It was a symbolic gesture, a way of severing our financial ties, of asserting my independence. The next step was more challenging. I needed to gather evidence of Sarah's infidelity, to build a case that would be irrefutable in court. I spent hours poring over her phone, meticulously documenting every message, every photo, every detail of her affair with Damien. I created a separate folder on my computer, labeling it the Judas File. The process was both painful and cathartic. Each message, each photo, was a fresh reminder of Sarah's betrayal, a knife twisting in my heart. But at the same time, I felt a sense of control, a sense of purpose. I was taking back the power, reclaiming my life one piece of evidence at a time. I also began to investigate Damien. I scoured the internet, learning everything I could about him, his background, his career, his personal life. I discovered that he was not the successful artist he pretended to be. His career was built on a foundation of lies, half-truths, and carefully cultivated connections. He was a fraud, a charlatan, a parasite feeding off the wealth and influence of others. I started to see a pattern in Sarah's choices. She was attracted to superficiality, to glamour, to the illusion of success. Damien, with his flamboyant persona and his carefully crafted image, was the perfect embodiment of her shallow desires. He offered her an escape from the mundane reality of our life together, a world of excitement, intrigue, and forbidden pleasure. And she, blinded by her own vanity, had fallen for his charade. As I delved deeper into Damien's life, I discovered a series of unsavory secrets. He had a history of financial impropriety, a string of failed relationships, and a reputation for exploiting his connections for personal gain. I also found evidence of his involvement in questionable business dealings, including suspected tax evasion and art forgery. The man was a walking liability, a ticking time bomb waiting to explode. I realized that Damien was not just Sarah's lover. He was her enabler, her partner in crime. He had encouraged her infidelity, fueled her discontent, and helped her to rationalize her betrayal. He was as much to blame for the destruction of our marriage as Sarah was. And I would make him pay. My plan began to take shape. I wouldn't simply confront Sarah and Damien. I would orchestrate their downfall, a slow and agonizing descent into ruin. I would use their own weaknesses against them, turning their carefully constructed facades into weapons of self-destruction. Sarah, with her obsession with social status and her reliance on her circle of friends, would be the first to fall. I would expose her affair to her friends, revealing her hypocrisy and her betrayal of their trust. I would spread rumors about her infidelity, tarnishing her reputation and isolating her from her social network. I would make her a pariah, an outcast, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones. Damien, with his fragile ego and his dependence on his carefully cultivated image, would be next. I would use his past indiscretions against him, leaking information about his financial impropriety and his questionable business dealings to the press. I would contact his patrons, his galleries, his collaborators, revealing his true nature and undermining his credibility. I would destroy his career, his reputation, his livelihood. He would become a laughingstock, a symbol of deceit and corruption. But my revenge wouldn't stop there. I would also target those who had enabled their affair, the friends and acquaintances who had turned a blind eye to their betrayal, who had covered for them, who had facilitated their secret rendezvous. I would expose their own secrets, their own lies, their own hypocrisies. I would turn them against each other, creating a web of suspicion and distrust that would unravel their carefully constructed social circles. They would learn that loyalty has a price, and that betrayal has consequences. The execution of my plan was meticulous and relentless. I used every tool at my disposal, from social media to anonymous emails to carefully planted rumors. I became a master manipulator, pulling strings, orchestrating events, watching with cold satisfaction as Sarah and Damien's world began to crumble. Sarah's friends, once so eager to be seen with her, now distanced themselves, their loyalty evaporating in the face of scandal. Her social media feeds, once filled with adoring comments and invitations, became a wasteland of silence and judgment. Her career, which she had built on her charm and her connections, began to falter as rumors of her infidelity spread through the industry. Damien's downfall was even more spectacular. His galleries dropped him, his patrons withdrew their support, his collaborators distanced themselves. His carefully crafted image as a successful artist shattered, revealing the fraud beneath. The press, once eager to celebrate his talent, now hounded him, exposing his secrets and dissecting his every move. He became a pariah, a symbol of everything that was wrong with the art world. As the weeks passed, I watched with detached satisfaction as Sarah and Damien's lives unraveled. Sarah, once so vibrant and outgoing, became withdrawn and isolated. The laughter that had once filled our home was replaced by a heavy silence, broken only by the occasional muffled sob. Her eyes, once sparkling with joy, were now dull and lifeless, haunted by the consequences of her actions. She tried to reach out to me, to apologize, to explain, but I remained unmoved. My heart had hardened, encased in a shell of bitterness and resentment. I no longer recognized the woman I had married, the woman I had loved. In her place was a stranger, a ghost of her former self. Damien, stripped of his fame and fortune, became a shadow of his former self. The arrogance and flamboyance that had once defined him were replaced by a desperate plea for forgiveness, a pathetic attempt to salvage his shattered reputation. He reached out to me, begging me to stop the onslaught, offering me money, favors, anything to make it stop. But I remained unyielding. He had made his bed, and now he would have to lie in it. I would not rest until he had paid the price for his betrayal. The social circle that had once embraced Sarah and Damien now shunned them, their loyalty replaced by fear and suspicion. The friends who had once shared their laughter and their secrets now whispered behind their backs, their words dripping with venom and condemnation. The invitations that had once flooded their mailboxes now dried up, replaced by awkward silences and averted gazes. They had become outcasts, pariahs, their names synonymous with betrayal and deceit. I watched it all unfold with a sense of grim satisfaction. My plan was working. Sarah and Damien were paying the price for their actions. Their lives were in ruins, their reputations tarnished, their futures uncertain. But as the dust settled, I began to feel a growing emptiness inside me. The revenge that had once consumed me now felt hollow, a Pyrrhic victory that had left me with nothing but ashes. I had destroyed Sarah and Damien, but in doing so, I had also destroyed a part of myself. The man I had been, the man who loved and trusted, was gone, replaced by a stranger, a man consumed by bitterness and resentment. The legal proceedings were a formality. Sarah, broken and defeated, offered no resistance. She signed the divorce papers without a fight, her signature a shaky testament to her despair. The house, the cars, the investments, everything we had built together was divided according to the prenuptial agreement we had signed years ago, a document I had insisted on, much to Sarah's annoyance at the time. Now, it seemed my foresight had paid off. She walked away with a fraction of our assets, a pittance compared to the life she had grown accustomed to. The social ostracization was even more devastating. Sarah's friends, once so eager to bask in her reflected glory, now shunned her like the plague. Her invitations dried up, her phone calls went unanswered, her social media feeds became a barren wasteland. The whispers followed her wherever she went, a constant reminder of her fall from grace. She became a pariah, an outcast, a cautionary tale whispered in hushed tones at cocktail parties and charity events. Damien's fate was even more ignominious. Stripped of his fame and fortune, he became a recluse, hiding from the prying eyes of the press and the scorn of his former admirers. His galleries closed their doors to him, his patrons withdrew their support, his collaborators distanced themselves. His name, once synonymous with artistic brilliance, now evoked images of deceit and corruption. He became a laughingstock, a symbol of everything that was wrong with the art world. I watched their downfall with a mixture of satisfaction and unease. The revenge I had craved had come to pass, but it had left a bitter taste in my mouth. The anger that had once fueled me had dissipated, replaced by a hollow ache, a sense of loss that permeated every aspect of my life. The house felt empty without Sarah, the silence deafening. The routines we had shared, the meals we had eaten, the conversations we had had, all were gone, replaced by a void that threatened to swallow me whole. I had won the battle, but at what cost? I had lost Sarah, my wife, my companion, the woman I had once loved. I had lost my friends, my social circle, the life I had built. I had lost a part of myself, the part that believed in love, in trust, in the possibility of happiness. In their place was a stranger, a man hardened by betrayal, consumed by bitterness, and haunted by the ghosts of his past. The divorce was finalized. The legal proceedings concluded. I found myself alone in the house we had once shared, surrounded by the remnants of our life together. Sarah's belongings were gone, her presence erased, as if she had never existed. The silence was deafening, the emptiness suffocating. I wandered through the rooms, my footsteps echoing in the stillness, my heart heavy with a sense of loss and regret. The days that followed were a blur of routine and isolation. I went to work, I came home, I ate, I slept. The rhythm of my life was unchanged, yet everything felt different. The joy had gone out of my work, the passion extinguished. I performed my duties mechanically, my mind preoccupied with thoughts of Sarah and Damien, their betrayal, their downfall, their absence. The evenings were the worst. The silence of the house was unbearable, the emptiness a constant reminder of what I had lost. I tried to fill the void with distractions, books, movies, music, but nothing could drown out the noise in my head. The endless replay of Sarah and Damien's betrayal, the echoes of their laughter, the ghost of their touch. I found myself drawn to the places we had frequented together, the restaurants, the parks, the theaters. I would sit in our favorite corner booth, order our usual dishes, and pretend that Sarah was there across from me, her eyes sparkling, her smile radiant. I would walk through the park, our park, and imagine her hand in mine, her laughter echoing through the trees. I would attend the theater, our theater, and picture her beside me, her head resting on my shoulder, her breath warm against my neck. But the illusions were fleeting, the memories painful. The reality of her absence was inescapable, a constant weight on my chest. I was alone, adrift in a sea of loneliness, my heart a barren wasteland. The revenge I had craved had brought me no solace, no closure, no peace. It had only deepened my wounds, amplified my pain, and left me with a profound sense of emptiness. One evening, as I was aimlessly channel surfing, I stumbled upon a documentary about restorative justice. The concept intrigued me. Instead of focusing on punishment and retribution, restorative justice sought to repair the harm caused by crime and to bring healing to both victims and offenders. I found myself drawn to the idea, the possibility of finding some semblance of peace, some closure to the trauma I had endured. I began to research restorative justice, reading books, articles, and online forums. I learned about the different approaches, the principles, the potential benefits. I discovered that restorative justice was not about forgiveness or reconciliation, but about accountability, understanding, and the possibility of moving forward. The more I learned, the more I realized that this was what I needed, what I had been searching for all along. I contacted a restorative justice facilitator, a woman with a kind voice and a gentle demeanor. We met several times, discussing my situation, my feelings, my needs. She explained the process, the challenges, the potential outcomes. She emphasized that restorative justice was not a quick fix, but a journey, a process of healing and transformation. I hesitated. Was I ready to face Sarah and Damien? Was I willing to listen to their explanations, to understand their motivations, to acknowledge their humanity? The thought was daunting, but the possibility of finding some peace, some closure, was too tempting to resist. I agreed to participate in a restorative justice conference, a facilitated dialogue between myself, Sarah, Damien, and a trained mediator. The conference was scheduled for a few weeks later in a neutral location, a conference room in a nondescript office building. I arrived early, my heart pounding in my chest, my palms sweating. I paced the room, my mind racing with anticipation and dread. What would I say to them? How would I react? Would I be able to control my anger, my resentment, my pain? The door opened, and Sarah walked in. She looked different, thinner, her eyes red-rimmed, her face etched with lines of worry and regret. She was followed by Damien, his flamboyant attire replaced by a somber suit, his arrogance replaced by a look of shame and remorse. They both looked at me, their eyes filled with a mixture of fear and hope. The mediator, a calm and compassionate woman, introduced herself and explained the ground rules. We would each have an opportunity to speak, uninterrupted, about the impact of the affair on our lives. We would listen to each other without judgment, without interruption. We would seek to understand, to acknowledge, to heal. I took a deep breath and began to speak. I spoke of the pain, the betrayal, the devastation. I spoke of the loneliness, the emptiness, the loss. I spoke of the anger, the resentment, the desire for revenge. I spoke of the man I had been, the man I had lost, the man I hoped to become. Sarah listened intently, her eyes fixed on mine, her expression a mixture of shame and sorrow. When I finished, she spoke, her voice trembling with emotion. She apologized for the pain she had caused, for the betrayal, for the lies. She spoke of her own struggles, her insecurities, her misguided search for happiness. She admitted her mistakes, her selfishness, her lack of judgment. She didn't try to excuse her actions, but she offered a glimpse into the vulnerabilities that had led her astray. Damien, in turn, expressed his remorse, his regret for the hurt he had caused. He spoke of his own flaws, his narcissism, his tendency to manipulate and exploit. He acknowledged the damage he had inflicted, not just on me, but on Sarah and on our social circle. He offered no excuses, only a sincere apology and a plea for understanding. As I listened to them, I felt a shift within me. The anger that had been burning inside me for so long began to subside, replaced by a flicker of empathy, a glimmer of compassion. I saw them not just as the perpetrators of my pain, but as flawed human beings, capable of making mistakes, capable of causing harm, but also capable of remorse, capable of change. The mediator guided us through the process, facilitating the dialogue, ensuring that everyone had a chance to speak, to be heard, to be understood. We explored the impact of the affair on each of us, the pain, the anger, the loss, the betrayal. We acknowledged the harm that had been done, the damage that had been inflicted. We searched for common ground, for a way to move forward, to heal, to rebuild. The process was not easy. There were moments of tension, of anger, of tears. But there were also moments of understanding, of empathy, of connection. We began to see each other not just as adversaries, but as fellow human beings, bound together by a shared experience, a shared pain, a shared desire for healing. As the conference drew to a close, we discussed the possibility of making amends, of taking steps to repair the harm that had been done. Sarah offered to write me a letter of apology, expressing her remorse and her commitment to making amends. Damien offered to volunteer his time at a local charity, using his artistic talents to benefit the community. I, in turn, offered to forgive them, not to forget what had happened, but to release the anger and resentment that had been poisoning my soul. We left the conference room with a sense of cautious optimism. The journey ahead would be long and challenging, but we had taken the first step towards healing, towards reconciliation, towards a new beginning. The weeks that followed the Restorative Justice Conference were a time of profound introspection and emotional upheaval. Sarah's letter arrived a few days later. It was a long, heartfelt apology, expressing her deep remorse for the pain she had caused me and acknowledging the devastating impact of her actions on our lives. She wrote about her own struggles with insecurity and self-doubt, her misguided search for validation and happiness outside of our marriage. She didn't make excuses for her behavior, but she offered a glimpse into the vulnerabilities that had led her astray. Reading her words, I felt a mix of emotions. Sadness, anger, but also a surprising surge of empathy. I saw a glimpse of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman I had thought I knew. I saw her vulnerability, her pain, her regret, and for the first time, I began to understand the complexities of her betrayal, the human frailties that had driven her actions. Damien, true to his word, began volunteering at a local art center for underprivileged children. I saw pictures of him online, surrounded by smiling kids, his face lit up with a genuine joy I had never seen before. It seemed that the experience was having a transformative effect on him, stripping away the layers of arrogance and narcissism, revealing a hidden core of compassion and empathy. The changes in Sarah and Damien were encouraging, but my own journey was proving to be more challenging. Forgiving them was one thing, but letting go of the past, releasing the anger and resentment that had been consuming me, was proving to be a Herculean task. The memories of their betrayal, the pain of their deception, the echoes of their laughter, all continued to haunt me, casting a long shadow over my present. I found myself struggling with conflicting emotions. On the one hand, I wanted to move on, to heal, to find peace. On the other hand, I was afraid to let go of the anger, afraid that forgiving them would mean condoning their actions, diminishing my own pain. I was caught in a tug-of-war between my desire for closure and my fear of vulnerability. I sought the help of a therapist, a wise and compassionate woman who helped me to navigate the complex landscape of my emotions. She guided me through the process of grieving, of acknowledging my pain, of accepting my vulnerability. She helped me to understand that forgiveness was not about condoning the actions of others, but about freeing myself from the shackles of resentment, about reclaiming my own power, about choosing to move forward.